What an end to a chapter. Like, seriously, that was such a good ending. I was getting Empire Strikes Back vibes from that ending, seriously. Hello everybody, I am PhenomSage, and welcome back to another Made in Abyss chapter review. Our first new chapter, I'll say, Chapter 27, Forbidden Flower Garden. Now, just to let you guys know, this review will be a little bit different from my previous Made in Abyss reviews and that chapter review comparisons thing that I did last week. This will be a lot more focused, and it'll cover not everything that happened in the chapter. I'm not going to go into in-depth analysis, and the reason for that is because while I was reacting to chapter 27, which you can find in the description, by the way, I didn't mention that, but I did a live reaction to the chapter in the description below. While I was reading the chapter and doing that reaction, I realized that a lot of my in-depth analysis that I usually do in my reviews were now being transferred into that reaction because I was stopping and commenting and speculating throughout that entire chapter. And I felt like if I had done that in this review as well, it would be a lot of more the same, and anybody who watched the reaction would be getting the same thing that I'm saying in this video. So for that reason, I'm going to make the more in-depth analysis sections, stuff like that, I'm going to keep in the reaction. So if you want that, you can get that there, and the review will be its own focused thing where I talk about the biggest parts of the chapter and my thoughts on it and what I think it could mean for future chapters. Also, this is called Chapter 27. I heard you guys loud and clear. I knew this before even doing that video last week, so don't worry guys, I have this information. The anime actually ended halfway through Chapter 26, so this review will also encompass what happens at the end of Chapter 26 and cover fully Chapter 27. Picking up right where the anime left off, Nanachi, Riko, and Reg are off on their adventure, continuing down the fourth layer, and we kind of get to the next area really quickly, a really important area that kind of took me by surprise when I was reading this chapter. We are now at Liza's grave. We are now at the Field of Eternal Fortunes that she loved so much. And this really took me by surprise, but we are not alone in this field either. We show up and there's somebody else here, one of Bondrewd's men, along with a couple other delvers, and Bondrewd's men are actually given a title here, the Umbra Hands. I saw the Praying Hands in one chapter, in chapter 26, and then in the next chapter, they're called the Umbra Hands, so I'm going to call them the Umbra Hands. Although the translation in chapter 27 seemed to be really weird, like it was not translating things I felt like should have been translated, like it didn't translate Eternal Fortunes. It was doing some weird things with the translations of the creatures in this chapter, so I'll talk about that later on, but I don't know, it's just weird. Tell me if there's a better place to read this series or if I'm reading it at the right place. I just want to know so I can get the best translation possible. Anyways, we show up, we see one of Bondrewd's men here in the Field of Eternal Fortunes, and he actually seems to be a good guy, at least at the moment. Okay, maybe good guy is stretching it a little bit, but he is not meaning harm or anything bad towards Riko, Reg, and Nanachi. And the interactions between him and Reg during this chapter and the way he talks to him, I'm really wondering what this dude's motives are and what he's planning and what Bondrewd is planning himself. Because he actually seems to want to help them sometimes. Like he's saying, go get your friends, get them away from here because this place is dangerous. This is a forbidden spot. And while Reg is first trying to survey this dude, before he even has his first dialogue with this dude, the Delver immediately recognizes that Reg is there and just in a split second just disappears and reappears. So clearly this guy is really fast, he's really strong, and I was mentioning this during my reaction, but I think any one of the Umbra Hands are easily strong enough to take out Riko, Reg, and Nanachi. Like, not even just putting Bondrewd out of the equation. His men alone, one of his men feels like they're strong enough to take out our group, which is pretty terrifying. I have no idea what will even happen when we encounter Bondrewd. I don't know how would we even face up to him when already his men are this strong. We'll definitely find that out in future chapters, so I'm looking forward to that. But one shot I really love from this chapter is when Nanachi sees Reg spotted by the Delver and learns that they were watching over them this entire time, and she She is visibly upset by it. You can see her tearing up. She thinks, how long was he watching us this entire time? And of course she's talking about Bondrewd, and she wonders how long has he had his eye on us. And I just love that nice little touch that we see her tearing up, because of course it's traumatic thinking about this man, and it's even more traumatic thinking about how that man potentially might have been watching over you all of this time without you even knowing it. So I really enjoy that little detail. Another nice piece of development that we get in this chapter comes between Reg and Nanachi. After Reg's initial meeting with the Delver and getting out of it alive and being told, go back to your friends, get them out of here, Reg doesn't just stop there, and I love this line here. Reg says, I want to pursue him further. I want to see what these guys are up to, because he knows what it means to Nanachi to find out what Bondrewd is doing and what's going on with this whole situation. And Nanachi at first is opposed to it. She doesn't want Reg to put himself at risk. She knows the dangers. But eventually, and I didn't even notice this while first reading, I thought this meant something completely opposite to what it actually means. Eventually, she reconciles with the fact that they need the information and they need to learn more about what Bondrewd is doing and what his team are doing here. She tells Reg to go for it and to get this information. On first reading, I thought that she was literally saying, we can't do that because we need more information before we just blindly go in and try to investigate these people further. But it was the opposite. Nanachi actually admits that they need to get closer and find out what's going on. And Reg's response to this is just probably my favorite line in the entire chapter. He says, leave it to me. Nanachi's enemies are my enemies too. And I love this dynamic so much. I love the dynamic and the relationship that's forming and developing between Reg and Nanachi. It's basically been forming ever since they first met. Like, they just had a natural affinity for one another. And it's only gotten better and better. Now, here's something that confused me throughout the chapter, and it has less so to do with the source material and the content, and more so to do with the translation, and this is what I was talking about earlier. Throughout the chapter, the insects that attach themselves to the eternal fortunes in this field are referred to by different names. At one point, the Delver, the Umbra Hand, says that most of the Imagos are spread throughout this garden sleeping, waiting for the signal. But then later on in the chapter, he says that these creatures coming from the inviolable sixth layer have been named Kuangatari. So which is it, translation? It's not a huge deal, but it is slightly annoying not getting the definitive name for these creatures. I'm going to assume that it's Kuangatari over Imagos, just because he literally says that's what they're named. So I assume that that translation earlier in the chapter was an error, or maybe it's referring to something else that I'm not even thinking of right now. If you have the answer to that, please tell me in the comments. That would really help me out. We find out that the Umbra Hands were actually sent to this field, I assume, to collect specimens. That's the only hint we get at what these guys are doing here in the first place. As for what Bondrewd needs these specimens for, I have no idea, but I'm sure that'll come into play later. Maybe not, I don't know, it could just be a random thing. But we find out that it was just too much for them to handle and only one Umbra Hand remains. Also, side note, but why does only one of them have a uniform, this scary mask, and then the rest don't? Are they like in different leagues, or what's going on there? If the Umbra Hands can also compose of Delvers that don't have that suit, I wonder if the man that we saw way back, the one Reg saved from the Tamagotchi, I wonder if he has anything to do with the Umbra Hands or Bondrewd or anything like that. Because the Delver says that the one that found your everlasting pickaxe is also a goner, so I wonder if that was the dude who found that pickaxe in the first place, since they were up there on the goblets. Anyways, this Delver, this Umbra Hand, says something really interesting. Reg asks, if this is too much for you to handle, where's your boss? What is your boss doing? And he says he is currently unavailable, and I wonder what that could mean. I wonder, what is Bondrewd doing right now? What is he preparing for? Because later on, we find out that he is awaiting our arrival. He is awaiting Rico, Reg, and Nanachi. What is he doing? We will most certainly find that out in the future, so don't bother telling me. But it is fun speculating on what he is planning and what he's going to do to them. Oh god. In order to exterminate these Kuangataris, the Delver just straight up pulls out a flamethrower and starts burning this field of eternal fortunes along with the Delvers that had been infected and taken over in the first place. There's not much to say about this other than it's really fucking cool, but I just need to make a note and say, my fucking god, the artwork. Akihiro, you genius. The way that he draws flames and this background of just burning, smoking air, it is just incredible, and it looks so beautiful. I honestly doubt that any adaptation of this scene would be able to convey just how fucking amazing these flames look, and the way it's shot and the way the background looks. It's just so well done. God, it looks incredible. I really like focusing on the pieces of character development and relationship development between these characters, which is why I love the scene where Reg is running away from the burning flowers. Initially, he had told that Delver, he said, "You're burning up the Delvers that had traveled with you? What's wrong with you? Why are you doing this? They're still in there." And that's just Reg being as naive as he is. I love that that side of him still isn't gone. I have a feeling that it will be gone in the future, unfortunately. And we get a little hint of that there, because right now, he says fuck it, he runs away, but he does it with purpose. He says, "I can't lose sight of what I'm trying to protect. What will happen to those people and my pride as a Delver are of no concern right now. I can't lose sight." And I love that line. That's probably my second favorite line. Reg, you just have such good dialogue. I love you. You see an amazing shot of Reg's eyes, just fierce with determination, but still clouded with tears. And you see him thinking about Riko and Nanachi's agony, what they've gone through. And I just fucking love Reg as a character. He's so damn good. Easily my favorite character from this year. I think I can pinpoint what I love about Reg so much, and it's that he reminds me of Vivi from Final Fantasy IX. Just this character that starts off so innocent, and over the course of this story is exposed to so many things, learns so many different ways of the world, and it eventually causes him to develop over the story, becoming more mature and more capable. And I feel like Reg and Vivi are just so similar, and that's why I like him so much. If you haven't played Final Fantasy IX, I'm sure that that whole spiel just meant nothing to you, but I feel like I had to say that. I just love Reg as a character. He's so damn good. Finally, we get to the end of the chapter, what I mentioned at the beginning of the review. Just so good. I love the way that Akihiro chose to end this chapter, just on a very sad and somber note. And it came out of nowhere too, because this chapter, it was intense, but I didn't really feel sadness or just this sense of defeat. And technically we didn't get defeated, but by the end of this chapter, I felt the hopelessness that our characters feel right now. Watching as the field of eternal fortune just goes up in flames. Riko's look of devastation. Nanachi being regretful for what she led her two friends into. And Reg just looking back on the whole situation about how they were watching him, and how things ended up just so differently than what it was when they got there. And the last panel of just Reg shaking, you can see his hand shaking, so good. Like I said, it just puts this feeling of defeat and hopelessness into the reader. It did into me anyways. And it's so well done because we didn't really have any losses or defeat. Like, we got out of that relatively unscathed and we're fine. One thing I am interested in is Reg's line where he says, "The way they were watching us, and my memory too." What does he mean by that? What does he mean when he's referring to his memory? That might be something I missed while reading the chapter, but I don't recall anything about his memory ever being brought up in the chapter, so I'm wondering what that has to do with this whole situation. I think there's a lot of different interpretations you can make about what Reg is thinking at this moment and why he's thinking that. So feel free to tell me about what you think about that in the comments. I would love to hear everybody's thoughts on this final frame and Reg's thoughts, because I have my own thoughts about that. I told you them, but I don't really feel like I completely understand what Reg is thinking at this point in time. Maybe we'll get that next chapter, but as for now, this was chapter 27, Forbidden Flower Garden. Thank you guys so much for watching. I know a lot of people didn't want me to make a chapter review just straight for one chapter per week. A lot of people wanted me to bundle it up, maybe do 2 chapters per review. But I feel like 1 chapter is perfect for me because I like to talk about certain things a lot longer than another person would, and I feel like if I tried to do 2 chapters, I would just end up making a 40-minute video. So 1 chapter per review is fine with me. If I feel like I'm not making progress and I want to pick it up what I'll do is probably, like I said, I said this before in one of my videos, I'll release 2 chapter reviews a week instead, but still keep it 1 chapter per review. Just because I want to keep it focused, I don't want to cover too much content. And only doing 1 chapter means I can include the sweet chapter title in the videos, so that's cool. Thank you guys so much for watching. I would recommend watching, in the future, I would recommend watching the reaction first, then moving on to the review. I think that's just how, I just think that's the best way you're going to get my thoughts cohesively. So yeah, thank you guys so much for watching this. Stay tuned next week when we talk about chapter 28. And as always, have a good day.